With so many options, why choose Arizona State University?
For me, the only online option was ASU because of the quality. Their faculty was really involved with their students and care about your personal journey. The dedication to my personal development from my professors, that's been extremely valuable to me.
Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
I have zero regrets. I'm okay that I took off my clothes for a living, and the little mishaps that took me too far down the rabbit hole in that sex industry, and the few times that I got hurt. And I understand the responsibility I have and hold with hurting myself in that way. But I also understand and forgive myself because in grace, I did the best that I could at that moment.
Welcome to the Beautifully Broken podcast, brought to you by Ampcoil. I'm your host, Freddie Kimmel, and on this show we discuss the common thread survivors share after walking through the fire, the practitioners making a difference, and the treatment modalities that deliver healing back into the hands of the people who need it most. Witness the inspiration we gain by navigating the human experience with grace, humility, and a healthy dose of mistakes. Because part of being human is being beautifully broken. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Beautifully Broken podcast. I'm here with Angelina Lombardo. She is an amazing coach. She's an author. She has had an incredible journey to be here on the show today, and she's got a message that is going to blow everybody away. Angelina, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Freddie. I really appreciate it.
Well, trust me, it's my honor. As we were saying, we do a little pre-talk. I don't always jump on the episode and just start gabbing away these truth bombs about health and wellness. But, you know, the truth is when you get into the podcast world enough, you start getting these booking agents and people reaching out to you. Can I be on your show? And for me, when people inorganically find me through the interweb, it's usually kind of like a hard no. It doesn't feel wonderful. But I saw Angelina's stuff and I was like, oh my God, it's a 10 out of 10. It was like a thumbs up. So thanks for putting out that vibe.
I'm happy that you picked it up. That's pretty cool. I'm similar. I have to read and feel out a person just for a few moments, and then I pick up. I think I pick up an energetic resonance or not, because I feel so in tune with what's going on inside of me. So I feel similarly for you.
Well, Angelina, can we talk about what drove you to start writing books? Because you've got a couple books on Amazon and they look like they're very compelling and you've got some great titles there, but I want you to be the one to treat the audience with the titles of your great works of literature.
So what prompted me to start writing books was a deep desire to live by example in love for the planet. I mean, that's the big overall. It was my way of contributing my love, the love that I feel for humanity. And that was my expression of that. That's my start of expressing that deep love for humanity. So that's why I started, which is why my first book is called Love Letters to a Stripper. I am a ex-sex worker or a retired sex worker. I was in the sex industry for 8 years. And when it came time for me to speak my message, which is pretty giant, my message, at least for me, the first pool of people would be the people in the sex industry. I felt like they needed that the most. They really needed to know that they were being seen, that they were being loved, that I understood because I am one of them, that they are of extreme value, that their adversity and their hard knocks were not the sum of who they were, that they were born for resilience. So I just really wanted to be that example and extend my arms to embrace and work, advocate for that community. So that was the starting.
So you wanted to advocate for that community. How did you find your way into that community to begin with?
That is, yeah, that's where the story starts. Um, my childhood was full of physical, sexual, psychological, emotional abuse. And coincidentally, of course, I grew up with developmental trauma. Developmental trauma is um, sort of a newer way of understanding trauma that is coming from a place where you were consistently exposed to traumatic shock, verbal, emotional, psychological. And the way that you develop as a result of that really results in my case, it was dysregulation, emotional dysregulation, disassociation. It wasn't safe to be in the world. And so one of the coping mechanisms that happen with developmental trauma is a disassociation, and it shows up as a disorganization, it, making decisions without judgment or without a sense of self or knowing how you're making that decision. So I call it trauma reaction. And I was struggling with chronic homelessness at the time. And I had really done all that I thought I could to gain employment. I think my first time being a homeless teenager on the streets was at age 14.
Mm-hmm.
And this was at age 22. And I found myself in the same chronic homeless position, no money, no food. The resources were really thin. I was in a shelter, and I answered an ad in a newspaper. And I really thought that I was answering an ad for dancing telegrams. And it turns out it wasn't dancing telegrams. It was a pimp. And he was searching for people who could go to people's houses and perform. So dancing nude, and he used to tell us, it's up to you. Whatever happens behind closed doors is your business. I can't, condone. But he would say things, that would allude to, but you get paid way more if you do something, anything that they want, right? So this was a trauma reaction. I just remember the first time servicing a client, I was dancing. So there was nothing, I was terrified. And I just remember going into the space where this person was waiting. It was 30 minutes. I danced around. I really just tried to mitigate my anxiety and my hypervigilance of, am I safe? Am I not? Am I safe? Am I not? Right.
Yeah.
And being really almost close to being frozen. But then I walked out of that place with $500. And back in 1990, what was that, two? That was a lot of money for someone who was homeless and struggling for most of my life. I just didn't have the concept. And so from there, I just thought, this is what I have to do. This is all there is. This is what I am good at. It progressed from there. I would say embody, but that wouldn't be the word I would use then, because I wasn't embodying my healing of sexual trauma by being naked in front of thousands of men and women. But it did facilitate that. And there was an awareness. I definitely, there was an awareness. So that's how I found myself stepping into the sex industry.
And how long did you stay in that industry until obviously you said like $500 for a gig? I mean, that's pretty incredible. That's still a lot of money. How long did you stay in that industry until you felt a pull to get out?
Oh, I was in the industry for three years solid. It allowed me to travel. It gave me, what it really did was it gave me the freedom to be traumatized, which is really weird. I was able to eat. I had a place to live, and I could take a deep breath and just be with my emotions and my moods. Consequently, I was extremely depressed, existentially depressed. And it just gave me room to breathe and think. And I wasn't at the mercy of someone else, which is ironic. But I thought it gave me a sense of control. So I was there for 3 years. I met my daughter's father in a club. We are from Maui, Hawaii. It's an island. And I would go over to Oahu to dance. We didn't have any clubs on Maui. So I started on Maui just with a pager to dial up, and I would get the address, and I would go to clients' homes, their personal homes, which is, I mean, it's dangerous. It's extremely risky and very intense. And I thought of myself as being a very intense person and a very strong, resilient in a street smarts, because I was on the streets, right? So I was like, I'm in control of this. I got this. I'm going to do this. This is feeding me. This is giving me this, independent of anybody else. And this is the first time I've ever felt any sort of freedom. So I'm going to own this, is what I thought. And I was very cocky and rebellious, and I definitely had that streak, and I still do. So I met him on Oahu, and we started a relationship. I had my daughter a year and a half later, and it was not a great relationship. He's a professional athlete at the time, and it was full of all the stuff you hear: the domestic violence, the trying to get out, trying to save my daughter, trying to raise her differently, with an awareness and mindfulness that was absent from my childhood, was like the highest priority for me. And to be in an abusive relationship with someone who I thought had all the attributes that were really going to, I guess, reflect what I thought was this up-leveling that I had. I'm making money. I feel independent. I feel like I'm in control of things. I feel sort of powerful in a sense, right? To be in that position and situation was very confusing, and it was very hard, and there was a lot of shame involved, and he used that a lot. So I finally had the courage to engage the resources in my community and Helping Women is an organization that we have on Maui for domestic violence. And so I went through the channels and got myself out of this situation with my daughter, only to be brought back into a much bigger battle, which was a custody battle with an athlete who had an unlimited supply of resources financially, one who lied and cheated. And it was a very extreme case. And for Maui, which is a small community, it really put me in an odd position in a pocket. And I had to get back to making money in order to pay for a lawyer. So what did I went to Oahu to do the same thing, it was used against me, of course, in courts. So I really shot myself in the foot there, but also felt like there was no other way, right? I felt like this is the only thing I can do. I had attempted to do many things. And actually, looking back on it now, I had a badass list, like 50 miles long at that point, but did not realize how much value I brought to the table and what I was actually capable of doing. So.
Wow, that's incredible. Oh my God, there's so much I could say. First of all, you need to copyright this, because as you're saying it, I was like, this needs to be on HBO or Showtime. It's a great movie. It's a great script. Find a script writer and copyright it.
I actually, agree.
You are?
It's in the, yes.
It's in the works. It should be.
Totally
It should be.
Yeah.
It's so compelling. I wanted to ask you, where you're talking about, working working in the adult sex industry, dancing. When you were in it, was it more an overwhelming feeling of empowerment, like I'm making it, or was there more an overwhelming feeling of self-judgment, and you knew it was something you didn't want to be in?
It was an overwhelming feeling of empowerment, and I've actually shared this before. It was sort of strange because I felt extremely empowered. There were still instances where I was being taken advantage of. I was getting hurt in the line of work because that's the risk you do. Whether you're in a club with a bunch of people, that doesn't mean that a man isn't going to reach over and help himself. And it happened, and it's sexually traumatizing, and it adds to the pool of trauma I had already had, right? But it sort of was my way again of showing men, and this is distorted, but still it was an experience I had of showing men that women are beautiful and we love them so much that we're willing to take off our clothes and show them all of our most deepest bits and pieces. And for me, I thought that somehow, psychospiritually, somewhere, that made sense. If they could see that I loved them, they would return the love to me and to humanity. And maybe we would stop this violent, relationship, the just profane masculine and feminine could finally become divine and reverent, right? And transcend so honestly, it was one of empowerment. I was definitely into being naked, which was different for me because I was very prude before this. And it just continued to fill me with a sense of pride. I knew I was being judged, but at that point, it just didn't really matter. They didn't understand in my mind. It was like they were not understanding.
Yeah. And if you look back on it now, do you have regrets about that process of moving through that part of life the way you did? Or how does it resonate now?
In all transparency, I have zero regrets for any part of my life. Literally, I have zero regrets because, it's not a justification, but I can say this. I'm super proud of how I came to where I am, and I 100% envelope and own that inner authority that I work with, that I know myself to be. And she had to come through the rungs. She had to put her pedal to the metal and do this work. It was a lot of shame that I had to weed through. And when it came down to it, a lot of that shame was coming from the outside, from outside of myself. It was external. It was people looking at me and me not understanding how I was participating in that relationship. So I have zero regrets. I'm okay that I took off my clothes for a living, and the little mishaps that took me too far down the rabbit hole in that sex industry, and the few times that I got hurt. And I understand the responsibility I have and hold with hurting myself in that way. But I also understand and forgive myself because in grace, I did the best that I could at that moment.
Bravo. I always want people to say that, what you just said. Like, I always want people to feel that. I don't want to front load the answer for them, but it's like, man, own your shit.
Totally.
Like, own it. All the ugly stuff. The ugly stuff, because the ugly stuff is the diamonds. My friend Kathy, who's been on the podcast, she's a spiritual minister. She always is quoting the, you've got to own 100% of your 50%.
Oh.
Because like you said, there are driving factors that put you in that position. But if you look at the total picture that you were forced there and pushed there and had no other choice, it just creates this horrible victim mentality. And then going forward, it's like there's a piece of that story that you can't own, but
right.
You can control the narrative, and that's so empowering and beautiful. And my God, I bet you know so many people that didn't end up like you did, that didn't end up on the other side with a beautiful daughter, with a wonderful career, with some books out on Amazon. You've came out of it really, really well, and I want to get into more of that. You have to transition. So you have Love Letters to a Stripper, and then you've got a newer book out, correct?
Yes, I do. one I just
Let's talk
actually
about that one.
just launched in December.
Oh my God, let's hear about it.
So that one's called The Spiritual Entrepreneur, Quantum Leap into Your Next Level of Abundance and, oh my gosh, abundance and impact. Jeez.
Impact.
I love it.
Let's save that brain fog moment. We'll do topic 3, which I already have lined up, but let's stay on the book. I love it.
That's pretty funny, right? So that book is for all of my heart-centered entrepreneurs who, so I help those entrepreneurs, the spiritual entrepreneurs, engage and remove blocks to create wealth. So I find I use my method of body, mind, and spirit, soul, right? Spirit, soul.
Mm-hmm.
And in any one of those areas, which is an integrative of the whole, I use that method in the process of inner authority. So how you just mentioned that you have to own every piece of your story, of what's happened, this responsibility that you have, the 100% of the responsibility for the 50%, right, is extremely important. And it has been a focal point in my life. So if I can own the story, if I can hold the space for my agreement, whether it was unconscious, subconscious, or otherwise, then if I can sit with that long enough, I start to receive that inherent wisdom, and there's a voice that's talking, right? And with that, I'm able to move through the shame or the anger, or maybe I need to forgive someplace, but at least I'm owning that, which means that I actually am embodying my life force in its total meant to be state. And that has been extremely important to me, especially because of the physical manifestations that my trauma as a child took in my adulthood. And that's in the book. It's the trauma. I actually you had a guest on your podcast, I think earlier this week or something. His name was Court Davies. And yes, and he had said something that I completely resonate with. He said, he was speaking about cancer, right? Cancer is your body digesting a biological or an emotional shock, right? And like sit with that. And then I would say that any diagnosis, like physical manifestation, is, for that matter, an accumulation of trauma or a biological or emotional shock, right? So for me, when he said that is the spiritual entrepreneur in the book. I actually address all those places where you might feel blockages to your next level. I love the book.
That's so good. I love my book.
I love my book. I do. I just do.
I love it. Well, I want people to read them. I want people to read both of them. How do you witness, like when you're working with someone, you're coaching with someone, these quantum jumps and removing these spiritual blocks? When you witness them remove the spiritual blocks, what are you seeing on your side?
What I see on okay, so here is the greatest, I think for anyone, there's an example. You meet someone new, and for whatever the reason is, all of a sudden you just hit this spot where you're in a conversation with this person, and it's sort of like a ladder. It's like this, and this person says it, and it's like this, and this. And it's like the two of you become this one unit, and you're potentiating each other because this person's saying stuff to you, material that you resonate so well that you never put into words, right? But then you get that, and then you add on to it, and then this consciousness just kind of climbs this ladder in a conversation in union with each other, right? So, and you can see that there's sort of a light in their eyes. They're getting it. You're just in tuned. You're very vibrationally in tune. And so when I work my 3-day immersives, so it's one thing to do the work the day before we do what we do on the second day. Words are deliver only so much powerful reality. then when you step into your own experience, because it's a solo experience, I'm not actually doing anything with them in this immersive, right? They're experiencing that for themselves. But when they have context, when they've already got some sort of a conceptualized understanding, if you will, or awareness, and then they step in and then they step out, spiritually speaking, they are turned on, their eyes are turned on, and now they're ready for integration. And that integration process is extremely empowering for them. There is a period of time where it's so dysregulating to your systems. That's energetically, that's psychologically, that's mentally, emotionally. So you do have a period of time where you're just low because it's such a huge impact. And then you go on from there, integrating. In 6 months, you are not the same person. You just are not the same person at all. And from that point on, when that inner authority is turned on, when they can recognize that they're having a relationship, it's existing in their God pod, right? And they are ready to walk forward. They're just a different person. So I'm seeing people manifest the money that they wanted in the first place. There's a lot of generational victimhood mode, right? Scarcity mindset that is completely transformed. There are women who have sexual abuse stories who are now able to sit somatically in the experience of what they were not previously able to do, and they can work in that, and that's empowering. They can see their value and worth, so that's really giant. And there's just a lot more. But physically speaking, there are people that heal headaches and whatnot.
Yeah, I love it.
A lot
I
of
love
giant things. Yes.
So what are some of the tools? You say immersive, an immersive experience, 3 days. What are some tools that you get some of these massive shifts in consciousness on a spiritual, energetic level?
Well, I invite people who are ready to a 3-day immersive with me on Maui in plant medicine therapy. So that in itself,
taking aloe.
Yes, taking aloe, exactly.
Yeah.
And so from there, that's not to say that, that's a huge undertaking, and you really have to be clear and ready, body, mind, and soul, spirit. And I use a process for that before we enter this work. And there's a blueprint that's created it's a Socratic, somatic, intuitive, empathetic framework that I use. And it allows for me to, because I've been in my own journey, I'm merely holding space for that potential I already know exists in them. I already know it's in every single one of us as human beings, right? It is who we are. Like
we've all got God particle in us.
Abso-freaking-lutely. Abso-freaking-lutely. So I know that without a shadow of a doubt, I hold that potential for them to then step into that. So we work the first day, and the week up to the 3 immersive, we work on these, creating the blueprint, and I like to understand what it is that they want to transform and transcend, and so we work on that. And then the day before is very quiet, the day of very powerful, the day after integration, and then after that there's a 6-month period where most people, if not 12 months, want to stay and work on that material. It's that unconscious material that they've excavated and are now ready to transform and transcend. Some people are walking out of our work together without having to think about it anymore, where they had ruminated endlessly for probably years on, this happened to me, and I've tried every modality, and I've done everything I can think of, and I'm stuck. And it's a big, I'm stuck, I'm confused, I don't know what to do. And then it just repeats and repeats. So people are walking away from the 3-day immersive with a great understanding and an extremely strong foundation with that. So
it's so funny. I think about like college, where I definitely experimented with like psychedelics and mushrooms, and did a little acid, and And I remember some other stuff. We won't go into that on the podcast. But I would get really, really, like, it was a clear, looking back on it, I remember my friends kind of being like, I would get so self-righteous the other day. And I'm like, guys, we shouldn't be abusing drugs. We shouldn't be talking to each other. I get so introspective and using those, whatever you want to call it, soul helping shifters from a purely like entertainment lifestyle point, but my soul was actually being like opened a little bit every time, because I couldn't deny it. Every time I would be very empathetic to like lots of self-judgment, lots of shame, lots of like, I shouldn't be doing this. I know I have more in me for, the world. I shouldn't be wasting my brain cells, yada, yada, yada. I would always have those feelings. And so, it's been it really, really pretty much since like 2001, I've really been like, I just don't enjoy, I don't love getting high or being inebriated or being in an altered state. I've really come to love my state and realize like what a high vibration I'm at. And the times when I'm drunk, I feel, or high, I feel dull. I don't have access to like the direct channel to the solar system, which I pretty much feel like I have access to right now. And it's very unique. Now, I understand that they are doing some amazing work with mushrooms, with plant medicine, with ecstasy, with acid for post-traumatic stress disorder, for healing trauma, for sexual abuse. It's like profound, the healing experiences these humans are having. And it's, I think, because it's medicine of the earth and it needs to be used in the correct way. Like you said, there is a responsibility to using this. I would like everybody on the podcast to hear that. You can't just go and do plant medicine and be healed. You've got to do the work. You've got to do the spiritual work, the emotional work. And that is the hard stuff. Like any chronic illness or any chronic issue that you've been ruminating on, it's difficult. And the experience with the plant medicine, whatever, it's like a day, 2 days, 3 days, while that can be painful and pukey and diarrhea, like the real hard stuff comes after or before front loading it. And I'm sure you've seen that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I, like you, when I was younger, I was experimenting with hallucinogenics as well, psychedelics, right? And in each piece, and I started as, I think it was 15 MDMA. And I was ripped open in such a way, right? So here I'm having this, it was very chaotic life. It was a very chaotic life. And then I'd have these moments with these plants and these psychedelics and just walk away. And it got more existentially attuned to what was happening with myself and what was around me. And I'm extremely intuitive, psychic, and empathetic. And I always have been, right? So it just gave me a place to recognize, even though I wasn't ready to fully embrace that relationship yet. Fast forward after doing those things, obviously this potent work that I'm doing with plant medicine and this stuff, it can be done without the plant medicine, but with,
yes,
absolutely. In fact, I did that most of my career as a trauma-informed coach, etc. But people are interested, and people are, I'd like to say, waking up without being, I don't want to be righteous here and say people are waking up to, earth medicine and the plant medicines, and that it's more of I almost feel like it's sort of like a desperation. There are curious people, then there is like the very, very desperate, and then there are the desperate because they want to heal themselves. They're curious. I think that probably sounded like the same people. Like, well, they're desperate.
Listen,
and
it's complicated, and there's all types and different strokes for different folks.
Yes, it's complex.
And this is, there is an awakening for sure in the planet. Like, people want to be healed.
Yeah.
And I think, I ran a support group last night in Redding, Connecticut, again, at this magical place I'm staying. And we have a barn here, and we run a bunch of amp coils, and we help people with Lyme and autoimmune and lupus, or frequency and vibrational energy. And the energy in the room and the circle of people that are just, oh my God, there was not a dry eye in the house for 40 minutes of just sharing and the release of shame and judgment. And you watch people leave the meeting, you're like, oh, well, they actually did like 4 months of healing just by being able to speak the word in front of other people who are not sick.
Totally.
Because that's courage, and that takes time, but it's like, it's so important to go do the work, be alone, journal, meditate, go off on the intensive, reintegrate it into life.
100%.
And then how do you bring that back? Here's what I think we're missing. How do you bring it back to community?
That's right.
How do you bring it back into the circle?
I'll tell you, preach on that, because the other day I just did a little snippet that I submitted to Forbes. What is one of the best entrepreneurial traits of success? What is the trait of the most successful entrepreneurs? It's interdependence. And for this exact reason, interdependence. You need to be heard and seen. It is your divine right. It is also your responsibility to hold, to hear, to exude that sense of belonging that you also crave as a person in the world, as a human being, right? And that interconnectedness and being in community is extremely powerful. I didn't know that. I was constantly trying to get away, seclude myself, isolate. I was an isolator, big isolator. I hid. And it wasn't until I was witnessed and I felt safe with the person who was witnessing me, right, that I understood that there was an element that I needed, that was missing for me. And that was what I actually craved. I really wanted to be seen and heard and loved and accepted. And I wanted to feel safe in belonging. And obviously with people that, like I said, were safe and present and aware and mindful of that exchange. So that support group last night, definitely powerful, transcendent, potent, amazing.
Yeah. It's amazing what the power of community can do. And just to backtrack on, your desire to pull away and seclude, like anybody out there who's feeling that, they're like, oh, I shouldn't be, that's part of it. You need to go there too. You need to go through the journey. There's no, I've been coming upon this loops for me lately. Like there was a time where I just was like, I want to help people heal. I want to save people. I want to do good. I really don't. What I'd like to do is have enough educated awareness around what the journey has looked like for me. So when you show up and you want to join and share, we can see where there were similar touch points. But I don't want to deprive anybody of their journey.
Totally.
Because you got to go isolate. You got to go be alone. You got to go hurt. You might need to make that same mistake and that horrible decision that puts you in the corner crying with shame 100 times. But when you're done and you're ready to move forward, trust me, you got your tribe out there.
That is 100% true.
100%. So I want to go to chronic illness.
Yes.
And this is another thing that obviously, so again, Angelina was dropped onto the podcast by Super Media Connector from probably like intervention from Tori Doobie. And Tori Doobie is a great friend of the podcast. And this is another thing we hold in common. You've been through a little bit of chronic illness.
I wouldn't say a little. I would say a giant amount. My share. Let's put it that way. My share. It started in my childhood with migraines and knee pain, joint pain, and tummy aches, and I was neglected. My mother. She would call me a hypochondriac. So I did not have the best relationship with my symptoms, body, that kind of thing. Fast forward, let's see, where do we start? I really had a hard time for quite a long time. I would say by the age of 16, I was having extremely bad menstrual cycles. And I mean, pass out, end up in the hospital was very, very dramatic and very intense. And I had thought it was probably from the sexual abuse that I had been exposed to, obviously. But I didn't know what to do about it. And so I just ran with it. And that sort of took me into where I was in 2006. I think I was 36 years old. And for about a few years before that, I had started to have like really strange menstrual cycles. They were up and down. I had fatigue. I was barely there. I was very, very, very thin and frail. But yet I was, I had 3 businesses. I was a single mother. I was working my ass to the bone, like really struggling, but bringing it in. I had just gotten custody of my daughter, which was a giant feat to do, right? I went back to work and did all that, had to come home, then be a single mom with a cleaning company and a carpet cleaning company and a personal assistant company. And I was working like 17-hour days. And I had had an opportunity to go to California to see a functional and aging genius, I think, Teddy Ranker. And she took so much blood out of my body. And it came back with a diagnosis of chronic Lyme's disease, neurological Lyme's disease. And at that point, when I had got that diagnosis, I already had so many different diagnoses. I was already doing so much like the herbs, and I was already I was well versed because trauma, chronic complex trauma, actually there's a physical symptom manifestation. It's trauma in the body. It's the dysregulation, the dysfunction. It's that emotional shock and that, what did he say? Emotional shock and biological shock, because I was constantly being flooded with those stress hormones. I was always hypervigilant. I was always in this chronic state of anxiety, and it almost took me out. And so I crashed and entered into periodic paralysis, and I couldn't talk, I couldn't walk, I couldn't eat. I have spent well over $1 million, and that is not a joke. Healing and owning my experiences on every level. I've done that. So I went to Mexico, was the first place that I went to where they were doing ozone therapy for blood at that time in a cancer institute, William Hitt Center. And that was the gamut. I have done the gamut, yes. Right? And
love it.
It was informing, and it was also difficult. And the one thing that I think really, I would say I have healed in is knowing that I am the wise one of my journey and of what I need in any moment. And that comes from the relationship I have with my body and with my compass, my hell yeses and hell nos. I talk about it in my book. I'm the owner. We were talking about it earlier. I own every piece and part of the story that I've lived as much as I can. There may be I'm not saying I'm perfect. Jesus, that's not true. But I am perfectly imperfect. And I love that perfection. Right? I love that perfection. But because now I am in charge and I have allies, I call them informed allies. And my doctor at the time, Teddy Ranker, after she diagnosed me, she wrote a book. It was called Renegade Patient, and it was for people like me. She said it was a dedication to the Angelinas like you, the people that are that renegade patient that say, no, that's not how I feel, and that's not what's happening. And this actually is more like what it is, and this is more what it is. Rather than letting someone tell you, I started to tell them. And in chronic Lyme at the time, we were and we still are, it's complex. And I am not saying that I know how to heal Lyme's disease at all. That would be ridiculous to me. I've healed it for me. I call it remission, chronic fatigue syndrome. That went into remission in 2014. I was able to, that Epstein-Barr and chronic fatigue syndrome. So I have healed. Yes, I have, because I took charge and mapped out what I needed and just developed that relationship with myself, which is extremely crucial, I think, and not easy, but yeah.
Well, what percentage of the emotional work played into your transitional healing from Lyme?
It was really large. It was very large. Here's the very interesting thing for me. Wow, it was extremely large. I had conceptualized my entire life about how I should be relating to my body, disease, other people, etc. Right? I was told, I was programmed, and I knew I was programmed. And at the same time, because I'm so rebellious, I'm going to deprogram myself. So I was working on it in a certain way. It was a conceptualization, right? But the moment I actually had the experience of being in my body and being so quiet, and I was with a somatic experience therapist, and recognized and realized that there was an intelligence actually expressing itself through words that were coming into my consciousness. That was, we were dialoguing. We were also experiencing sensation. There was also movements that I didn't have control of, but were actually, it was being moved through my body and then released. And it was shocking because I had always conceptualized it and thought, well, it's deep and spiritual, and I feel like I should have access to it. And I felt like I did. And sometimes I was like, am I pretending? This just feels like I'm pretending, but I really believe it. And if I believe it really enough, then it will happen. And that is sort of how I was going on healing things my entire life, until that moment where I realized that it's actually inherently in there. There is something happening, and it's more than the concepts that you were raised with and shown in communities and in society and on the planet. And it's unique, and it's you can get existential or not, but yeah, it's that.
Yeah, it's unique and it's you. And
Yeah.
and from my experience of my goodness, I'm so lucky to talk to so many sick people. It's Lyme, chronic fatigue, Epstein-Barr. It's a syndrome. There's many, many things going on that are causing that person to be sick or ill. Most people with chronic illness, they can say, well, it was on this day.
Yeah.
I talked to a girl this morning, that was like, I slammed my finger in the door. I got an infection in my finger. I took the antibiotics, and the next day I woke up with lupus. And it was like, oh, from hearing that story so many times, pretty much every time, it's like, yes, I know. Wait, here's the part where you tell me where your partner cheated on you. You went to Puerto Rico, you drank the water, and you came back with Lyme.
Totally
it's
cascade.
Like yeah, it's the cascade effect. Very, very similar story. When I moved to New York City, like the buildings from 9/11 were still smoking. I was out looking for a job. At the end of the day, I would go and I'd lay in the shower. I would cry because the empathetic energy I was taking on from New York, of the sadness, the collective sadness. I didn't know I was an empath, but after a week of that, you better believe I woke up with crippling joint pain, and I was like, I don't remember being bit by a tick. I don't know. I mean, I grew up I bet I was bit by 100 ticks. I grew up at a farm. Who knows? But it's this combination of the way we don't process emotions. It's a combination of this toxic world that we've designed for ourselves. The light, the Wi-Fi, the food, the sound, the emotional imbalances, all of it. So we got to work on the whole picture. We got to work on the energetic system. So it's a systems approach to getting well is what I just, I want to piggyback on all your discoveries, the amazing things that you're sharing with us. And it's affirming to hear these stories where you have all these overlaps in healing. Well, look, they did that, and they had this compartmentalized system that took care of these 8 areas at the same time, and they worked through it, and they found a new level. I'm sure. I mean, do you want to go back to before? Is it do you want to go back to before you were sick, or you don't want to go back? You're like a super Angelina now.
I would never, like I said, the regret, right? I would never, and I am a super Angelina because now when I get sick, if I'm gonna get sick or ill, I have a system, right? I have a method and a system to go in and find where that resonance is off, out of alignment, and I can find it sometimes fast, sometimes not. And then I know how to write myself a prescription. I know what to do. That doesn't mean I always know, because sometimes the prescription is to get into bed and just freaking hate life for a while. Like just being, I allow myself that though. I allow, like you said, I allow those to hide. I don't shame myself. I don't judge myself. I give myself what I need, no matter what it looks like to someone else, because they are not in my experience. And I'm the only one. And I have paid the cost to be my full boss. And that is it. That's the truth of that. And all of that emotional, energetic release is extremely important. So I don't look at any one of those things as less than. It's just an alignment in resonance. And I would not go back. No, I wouldn't go back. And not at all.
I love that word resonance. I've been studying resonance a lot lately because we're talking about, with the technology that I work with, it's broadcasting a resonant frequency into the body. Not just a frequency, a resonant frequency. Okay, well, what's resonance? And the two great examples I have, it's like pushing a child on a swing set. If you meet him with the wrong force, you're going to break your elbows. You have to meet the back of the swing and just drive extra energy. When you do, he's going to swing higher. And it's a joyful experience for both the person pushing the swing and that person on the swing set taking the ride. It's like energy into the system, and the energy is going to grow. Or you can hit like a Tibetan singing bowl with a fork, and it's like this high-pitched ting, and the sound's going to die. But if you rim that bowl with like a wool mallet, that sound wah, 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 and it grows and grows and grows.
Yes.
You can feel that growth. So that's resonance. And you can feel resonance when you talk to somebody. Like you said before, when you guys are climbing that ladder, right?
That's
to me,
exactly
that's
what it
resonate.
is. Yeah.
You're like, or like you also quoted, it's like, you get a hell yes. Hell yes, that sounds like a good idea. I love the way you phrase that. That's so good. What a good way to tell your story.
Yeah.
So I have resonance for your story and all your stuff. One thing I want to ask you is, do you ever have people, you're going to say yes. Do you ever have people that are like, wait a minute, who is this woman? There's like a sex worker, stripper, plant medicine, drug dealer who's trying to tell me how to live my life.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. Is that like a big thing for you? Does that come up often?
I love that. Okay. So I can see, I did. Wait, let me laugh for a second.
Yeah.
It's so true. And I love the fact that you said what you said, because I think a lot of people think it, but they don't want to say it. And they think I don't feel, know, suspect some of that. And it's okay. So yes, I do. When it becomes, I haven't had a lot of debating conversations where it's felt, where there's resistance, because I just won't take part in those. And I'm not here to justify, because by the way, it may not work. Well, it's definitely not going to work for the person who thinks I'm a drug dealer in some way. That's something I don't want to agree to be that person for that person. I'm not going to agree to that relationship. Right. But yes, the sex worker part, it's kind of interesting, because I am a walking statistic throughout all of my childhood, where I ended up, how I got myself out of that, what I have actually transformed and then transcended, and been able to actually hold the space for other people. I think sometimes people don't take me seriously. It's possible. A lot of times people think that she's crazy because she went through all that trauma. So she's not, maybe she's not, I haven't had the conversation with somebody like that. I just have the run-ins, and it's usually, if it's tense, it's them tense. And like I said, I don't make the agreement with them, so I don't stay there. Other than that, I haven't had a lot of debating conversations that haven't resulted in someone feeling super safe with me, and also very I'm like, I hear this shit that nobody else wants to. They tell me stuff they're not saying to anyone else, and they'll even say that. Most of the time it's, oh my God, I've never told anyone that. I've never told anyone this. I've never told. So on the flip side, it does open the door for people who are curious, even if they're not, if they don't know themselves to be curious. That happens all the time. So I'm not making agreements with people that are thinking I'm crazy, sex.
And you don't get hammered on like social media, anything like that. The internet trolls.
I am
they're pretty kind.
Sure, I don't think they're pretty kind, but I don't pay attention to them, and I don't have a lot of them yet. The Instagram, at one point, it's the sex workers. This is sort of a bit of a sad phenomenon, and it's shifting. I can see shifts made in the sex industry, but it's women, that profane feminine, taking down each other. So it's from sex workers that are like, who you don't have street cred. I mean, coincidentally, I don't know what I look like, and I don't really concern myself with how other people see me in that way. I do think about it, but I'm not, oh my gosh, do I look like this, that, or the other? Sometimes they don't even believe I was a sex worker, that I was in the sex industry, that is my story. These are your two straight. You could never have been. It. So I get it all. And that's probably the extent of it. So, and I bet you I will get more. Now that I am more, my work has been more contained. Now I'm offering up to the bigger community of the planet.
Yeah. And you have a really clear direction on what your offering is. So I also believe that to be true, and I don't want to call that in for you. I just wondered. I was like, I wonder how that plays out. Only because I do witness a lot of self-sabotage in the social media. I have a friend, Marcy Richardson, and I've been dying to give her a shout out on the podcast. This girl, Opera Gaga, I think is her Instagram handle, and she is like a baller. First of all, she's a baller opera singer, unreal. And then she does professional pole dancing, and she does these opera arias on the pole. She's part of this massive theatrical company in New York City. I think it's Company XIV, and I've seen her in a couple of productions and known her forever. And it's like, she totally defies the definition of an opera singer, and she puts it all out there on her Instagram and takes her power. It's really beautiful. And I mean, I know people get very like, that's too much for me. And like, she gets a lot of kickback, and she, Marcy in her own beautiful divine way, she just puts it out there. But her talent, and like when you see her do her thing, it's off the hook.
Right. She's yeah.
I mean, it's just she's
owning that. Yeah.
Baller.
She's all on that and owning it. Right. And so she has a community behind this social media. And like, I know social media is important for my work, for the voice that I have to actually reach further than what it could reach if I'm standing on the street corner in Seattle. Right. But I also have a community behind the scene, like behind that social media. And I am not dependent 100% on these trolls' acceptance, right? Or changing anyone's mind. Or if you vibe with me, that's one of the reasons why I love social media, because I can hop on there and talk. And if you don't vibe with me, then right away, you're going to do what you do. But if you do vibe with me, that's the beautiful thing that's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's all I'm working for. I've definitely had my experiences with crappy little trolls and thinking,
listen, that's part of life.
What am I going to do? Should I not? Do I not? I have a little small story, actually. I was just starting to use social media right before this. So my mother died in 2017. This may sound like a bomb sort of story. It's perfectly fine. She suffered a great deal physically, chronically ill. There was my marker right there. She died. I was relieved. In the process of that, this Me Too, #MeToo started. And at the same time, I was also writing my love letters to a stripper book. And I was using social media to sort of engage the sex industry. And in that, one of my abusers tried to contact me through social media. That to me was more of a okay. And I literally shut everything down. I'm like, whoa, that's too much. Like the Me Too movement is happening. I'm starting to come out there with my voice about sexual abuse and being a sex worker, etc. Then one of my abusers from my childhood is trying to contact me through. So I shut it all down. And the coach I was working with, Susan Hyatt, I love her. She just said to me, are you going to let those MFs shut you
Yes.
down, or are you going to rise the way that you do in your life? It doesn't matter. So she sort of held space for me to realize that power that I got scared, that I gave him in that moment of being afraid of being on social media. I was in agreement with that, right? And so I just, he couldn't hurt me anymore. And it was I didn't realize that. I had to go through the entire process of owning that experience. So I had to have that moment of fear, and I literally shut down. My body stopped. I got fatigue like crazy. I had the whole thing just start. I'm like, oh my gosh, this isn't okay. I don't want him to know anything about me. I don't want him to see my daughter. And then I just went into the stories of all of that trauma. And she just picked me up and held the space. She's like, but he's not here. And if he does, you block him. And so she just sort of walked me through the process of owning the other side, the me that I had already become, that I had arisen to, and meet me there. And through that, I just healed that piece. So that was probably my biggest to date experience with something social media wise. Yeah.
Amazing. So we're almost at our hour. We're a little over our hour. So I wanna ask you a final question that all guests answer except for like the 25 that I forgot to ask. What does it mean to you to be beautifully broken?
Oh, wow. The first word that comes to my mind is excitement, alignment. I'm just getting words in my body feels happy and joyful, humbled, really humbled that I can see the beauty in the brokenness and the trauma that I experienced in my lifetime. And I just hold and pray for grace to continue to feel that excitement about feeling broken when I do, and to continue to embrace and embody my inner truth, my inner authority in deep resonance with my soul, spirit, and who I came to the planet to be.
That's beautiful. I love your word association and how easy those flowed. And truthfully, for people out there that want to, listen to this podcast, I just, when you hear an episode like this, and I know this one will be a great episode for people to listen. I'm already excited. And not to self-praise, but I'm going to go ahead and self-praise. Like the last 6 episodes of this podcast have been off the hook. I mean, it's like boom, 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 boom. There's like, it's just you get into the pocket and you get these guests on that are just inspired and they have an amazing message to share. We've just been really blessed. So
channeling some good stuff. Channeling some stuff from the highest. Yes.
So I think we'll have an opportunity, Angelina, if you want to do this again in the future, we can do another one.
100%. I would love that. Can I just add, I also want to gift any of your listeners my books. So
really?
Absolutely. I would love to actually send any one of the listeners on this podcast, if they want to send me an email and just put your name, and they can send an email to Angelina at angelinalombardo.com. Super simple. And I would love to gift my books to any of the listeners and they can take one or both, but I'm happy to gift anyone interested.
Aww, that's so kind.
Thank you. Yes.
That's a really beautiful way to move the world forward.
I agree. Thank you.
I thank you for being here. You're an awesome guest. You're like right at the top.
I love it. I
Seriously.
appreciate that. Thank you so much. You have no idea. I truly, I adore you. I feel very, I use the same word, resonant. I feel aligned with you. I do. Your energy is really nice. It complements.
We're probably going to collaborate on like an alive,
love to.
immersive event and bring people some next level healing shit.
That sounds amazing to me. I am so game for that, my friend. You got it.
I love it. Well, thank you for being on the podcast, Angelina Lombardo. Namaste.
Thank you for having me. Yes, namaste.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, you made it to the end of the podcast. Now, in a world where the average attention span is less than 10 seconds, we just spent almost an hour together. And I think this is the beginning of something really beautiful. Now, one way to support the podcast is to head over to FreddieSetGo.com and check out my newly launched page, Freddie's Faves, where I've linked every 5-star product and healing modality you hear about on the show. Most offer significant discounts by clicking the link. And please know, it doesn't cost you anything extra, and at the same time, they support the show through affiliation. So, check out Freddie's Faves on FreddieSetGo.com. This episode of the Beautifully Broken podcast was brought to you by our sponsor, Amp Coil, upgrading the vibrations of hearts, minds, and bodies all over the world. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's show, head over to iTunes and leave a 5-star review. Grabbing a download is like giving this virtual thumbs up that we're doing it right. And if you want to connect with me, shoot me a message on Instagram at FreddieSetGo.com or at FreddieSetGo. That's all for today. Our closing. The world is hurting. We need you at your very best. So take the steps today to always be upgrading, whatever it takes to move the needle. Remember, while life is pain, putting those fractured pieces back together is a beautiful process. I'm your host. I love you. Namaste. Have a wonderful day.